is that strange sound? Ooh. Where can it be coming from? Well.
Hello and welcome to episode 24 of Strange Sound. I'm Joe, host of Strange Sound. Glad to have you with us. Once again, I say us, but it's really me. Glad to have you with me. Glad that you're here. Glad that you're listening. Keep listening. Share the show with other people. Tell other people about it. Leave reviews on iTunes and Google Podcasts and, I'm sorry. What am I saying? Apple Podcasts, not iTunes. Apple Podcasts. Say nice things about us. I don't know. Say nice things about me. I'm just going to stand here and ask for compliments the entire time. How about that? That would be fascinating. Anyway, I'm glad that you're listening. I'm glad to have this one-sided conversation with whoever may be listening to this podcast. And if you are, in fact, listening, I encourage you to reach out. Go to anchor.fm/strange sound and leave a 1-minute voicemail. Or you can contact me via Twitter at Strange Sound Pod. You can go to my main website for my band Big Green. It's big-green.net. And there are various ways to contact me through there, through any of our social media properties. You can find links to those on the Anchor site, anchor.fm/strange sound, once again. So that's all that, would be happy to hear from all of you. And hope everyone is okay out there. I know everyone isn't okay, but I just hope everyone listening to this is feeling okay. These are rough times, as I've often said before, and I'm cognizant of that. I know that people out there are beginning to feel the impact of the discontinuation of the enhanced unemployment benefits that our national government has seen fit to allow to expire. Part of this, of course, is just bad strategy on the part of the Democrats when they were dealing with Mitch McConnell and Trump and the Republicans. They essentially gave them what they wanted in that first, the CARES Act, which is really the second COVID response act that they passed and that Trump signed into law. The $3 trillion one, or $2 trillion, I believe. Was it $2 trillion or $3 trillion? Someone out there remind me. They essentially gave away the store, as has been chronicled in some detail elsewhere, but in essence, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer apparently saw fit to sign off on the money cannon that they set up for the largest corporations in the world, hosing them down with piles of cash that were leveraged through about $500 billion in base capital, with which the Federal Reserve has been leveraging some additional, probably up to $4 trillion worth of stimulus money going to the most well-shod and well-resourced corporations in the history of humankind. Lots of money going to people who already have lots of money. So the Republicans got what they wanted in the CARES Act, and the Democrats Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer assuring us that in the next bill, just be patient. In the next bill, we'll get the things that we want. We'll get the aid to the post office. We'll get aid to cities and states. We'll get all that stuff now that we have absolutely no political leverage. Now that we've given the Republicans exactly what they wanted at our first opportunity. And now that we've given away any advantage we possibly could have, any leverage that we possibly could have over the other side in negotiating the particulars of the either bailout or stimulus package. They basically gave away the store. So anyway, who do you blame, right? Do you blame the Republicans for being who they are? Yeah, I do. They're a bunch of dicks. And once again, they use this as an opportunity to hose the richest people in the country down with even additional riches through the money cannon that they set up. That's been so well detailed by folks like David Dayen over at the American Prospect. Just take a look. He's done a lot of writing on this, and it's pretty disgusting. But at the same time, the Democrats, heads stuck in the 90s and stuck up their ass, their leadership apparently saw fit to give away whatever leverage they had initially at a moment when they could have, probably done quite a bit better because the Republicans needed their help in passing this massive corporate bailout that they ended up getting. They would have gotten some form of it. At the time, if people will remember, I think Schumer was bragging about the fact that no one named Trump would get any money out of this fund. And that was supposed to be some kind of victory that we're all supposed to rally around. What a jackass. That's not the issue. The issue is that you basically squandered all your leverage for what? What did they get in return? Well, they got the PPP, which has a lot of that money has gone to, once again, corporations. There was a massive bailout for the airline industry. There was additional money that went to unspecified defense. I think it was something like $50 billion went to, or $30 billion went to defense, even though last I looked, the military budget was in excess of $700 billion. They still got an extra $30 billion. That was probably specifically for Boeing, but that wasn't specified at the time. I don't know. That's probably come out since, but we'll see. In any case, what did they get? They got the $600 enhancement to unemployment insurance that had a sunset in it. Now that had an end date baked into the legislation. The money cannon that they were hosing the richest corporations in the country, and in fact in the world, down with, that doesn't have a time limit on it. There's no time limit on that. That doesn't run out. The enhanced unemployment benefits run out. And that's the money that's not only going to people who need the assistance because they've lost their jobs and they've lost their health insurance coverage and they're struggling to get through, and they're facing the worst job market we've seen since the Great Depression. And it's dangerous to go back to work because of the COVID crisis that has so far killed in excess of 160,000 people in the United States, and probably a good deal more. We've seen stats just this past week about excess deaths in the United States over the previous year. And there's in in excess of like 200,000 additional deaths than would be expected. And you have to bear in mind that people are doing a hell of a lot less travel by car. So I think there are a lot fewer people being killed in car accidents than there ordinarily are. This is a fucking disaster. And, we've got very little to fight with. The Trump administration is basically having it its own way, which is every which way from Friday. And it just seems like the Democrats are just sort of, at least the Democratic leadership is just kind of flailing. So, as I said before, there's people out there who are running out of money as we speak. And once again, I'm going to encourage everyone listening to this, anyone listening to this, if you haven't already been encouraged to do this, if you haven't already done it, get on the phone to your representative, particularly if you're represented by a Republican. Call them up and say, we need meaningful assistance package passed in the House of Representatives, passed in the Senate, and signed by the President of the United States. And we need it now. We need to help people. We need to make sure that they get substantial assistance through the entire duration of this crisis. Not just something that runs out at some arbitrary date. Not something that's a cost-conscious bailout, okay? This is not the time to worry about the cost. This is the time to make sure that people have the resources they need, and that, frankly, schools and municipalities and states have the resources they need to get through this crisis that has thrown millions of people out of work, that is negatively impacting tax revenues in states and municipalities and the federal government. But remember, the federal government is the issuer of the currency. So it's a little different for them. In any case, I don't want to get into that discussion so much, but I encourage you, contact your representatives, make sure that you make clear to them that you want to see some meaningful assistance provided to people who are out of work and people who are in need right now, and to state, local government, to schools, and to the post office. Don't forget the post office, which is currently under massive attack by the Trump administration. That's really just determined. They are determined to hobble the post office by their own telling for the specific purpose of inhibiting vote by mail. This is what Trump has said. He knows that the effect of what they are doing, in other words, removing mail sorting machines, something like 600 or 700 of them, and removing mailboxes, eliminating overtime. They're trying to hobble the Postal Service so that vote by mail simply cannot work. And we need to tell our representatives to push back on this. We need to hold their feet to the fire. So that's another thing you could tell them. Let me see. Let me give you a laundry list here. Oh my God, what a pain in the ass I am. There's a app that I've used to contact my representatives. It's called, let's see if I can remember this. I'm going to look on my phone here. Hold on. It's a handy little thing. It's an easy way to reach out. Oh, it's called Stance. And it's an easy way to record a voicemail message and have it sort of automatically delivered to your congressional representatives' voicemail box, your senators' Because if you're going to call these people, you're probably going to get a machine anyway, or you're going to be like hung up on the line for forever. This thing records your voice message. It gives you, as many iterations of it as you need to get, and then it sends the thing, and it stays at it until the thing is delivered. And you get sort of a cloud recording of it that you can also share on social media if you care to, that sort of thing. It's very useful. So I recommend that. It's called Stance. Just look for it wherever you get your apps. Anyway, and I don't mean appetizers, I mean applications. What was I going to talk about today? Well, I hate to spend too much time talking about the election, but in as much as we know what the Democratic ticket looks like now, and we do know that it's going to be Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that's going to be the Democratic ticket, for better or for worse. I suppose it's probably a good idea to look at this a little bit more. I can't help but have my head on this. I've been trying to sort of pry my head out of discussion of this. I mean, my household television is very often tuned to MSNBC, and all week it's just been sort of slathering praise on Kamala Harris, and it's kind of nauseating the way they do it. I mean, they just kind of carry it way too far. But in any case, I'm less disappointed by this choice than I would have been by other choices, and I think that's perhaps by design. I would, rather it be her than a number of other people. There are others that I preferred more, given the range of possibilities that you can expect from a Joe Biden. But it is what it is, right? I'm not one of those, and again, I think I've said before on the podcast, I'm in my 60s, early 60s. I'm a leftist, right? Been a leftist all my life. I'm not a member of DSA. I probably should be, but I'm not. I'm just not very much of a joiner. And I'm pretty much useless when it comes to organizing anyway. I have a hard time convincing myself to do things, let alone other people, but we'll see. And so I'm an elder I'm an elder leftist, right? I'm a late baby boomer. I wasn't of draft age during the Vietnam War. I think I've explained this in previous episodes as well. I was at the very end of that era, and by the time I reached draft age, the war was over and the draft was over. And my particular age cohort fell right in between the Vietnam era draft and the subsequent sort of restart of draft registration after the Iran hostage crisis, which picked up, I think, in the late 70s or 1980. I think 1980 is when they restarted it. I just missed it by a number of months. I think I've explained in previous podcasts. So I'm not really part of that generation entirely. I was a little too young for most of it. I do remember the 60s, but only as a child, essentially. So I am not one of the signers of that open letter that appeared in The Nation back in April that people have commented on and shared and talked about on social media, that was signed by Todd Gitlin and a bunch of other old New Left folks, sort of lecturing DSA members and complaining that the DSA didn't endorse Joe Biden. So I'm not one of the signatories to that letter. neither would I be, because it's silly. And, don't misunderstand. I think it's a really good idea to vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris this fall. I think that's the only thing that makes sense, because I think we need to get rid of Donald Trump. That's my own personal opinion. But I'm not going to lecture anybody who's on the ground, doing the hard work of organizing, to say, you need to publicly endorse them. No, that's not what DSA is here for. DSA and the, Jacobin and the sort of on the ground leftists that are doing the hard work right now, there's no point in asking them to endorse a ticket. That's silly. I guess what I'm saying is I would not be one of the signatories to that letter, right? I haven't commented on it. I haven't shared it on social media. I haven't. I am a subscriber to the Nation, but I haven't, put a comment in, because it's. I've read the commentary on it, and I've seen some stuff that sort of reflects my point of view on this, and that's fine. I don't need to add my voice to it. It's silly, But I wanted to use that opportunity to just raise one or two points about the phenomenon and the impetus behind sort of asking people to endorse. I tend to agree with Sean King on this, and Cornel West, in that, Biden can have my vote, but he's not going to have. I'm not going to lie for him. I will vote for him, but I will not lie for him. I think that's how Cornel West put it. And I agree with that. I'm not going to lie about them. I'm not going to say Joe Biden, has had a stellar career and he's always fought for the little man. I'm not going to say that. Sean King has said that he's muting criticism about Biden. In other words, he's only going to criticize him twice a week. Which I think is very disciplined of him, and I understand the impulse. I defer to him because he's much better than me. So I would say, that seems like a reasonable approach to me. But to refrain from criticizing, that's insane. And to endorse, I don't know what endorsement means when you're either an individual or a group, but I could say that, when you're encouraging a group like DSA to endorse a Democratic ticket that's, headed up by a centrist, basically conservative, anti-busing, corporate Democrat, I don't think that's their role. They're not going to do that, and they probably shouldn't. That said, some of the commentary I've heard about this issue has centered on the idea of the kind of long view of the socialist project in the United States and elsewhere. And it's globally, but certainly in the United States. And that electoral politics is kind of a distraction from that important work. I think that organizing work with the long view of, history, looking way ahead and, working for a more egalitarian future, a more reasonable future, I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to say, I'm not going to vote because I'm working on a better future. I think voting is probably the easiest thing you can do. And it's a private decision. If you feel compromised by voting for a Democratic ticket, then just don't tell anybody about it. That's my advice. And again, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying from my own perspective, as someone on the left, I just, it's so easy to do that. And if you don't do that, the consequences are enormous. The consequences of a Trump win, specifically for vulnerable communities in the United States, are significant. So it's a question of harm reduction. And my contention would be, look, if you're working on the long-term project of socialism in America, which I think is something worth working on, and I'm glad people who are smarter than me are doing the work, and people who are better organizers than me are doing the work. If you're working on that project, and if you want people to buy into that project, which eventually people will have to, if it's going to be a success, right? I mean, you don't want to be antagonizing people as you work on this better, more egalitarian, more inclusive future, right? You want to be trying to bring people along. My contention is simply that if we as socialists, and I include myself in this sort of broader rubric of that, if we as socialists allow a second Trump term, we're basically throwing a huge cohort of, for example, dreamers to the wolves. Those people are going to pay the price. Those are younger people. Those are committed activists. They've been fighting for their rights for years. They really fought hard for their ability to live here and to prosper here. And we can't throw them under the bus and expect them to be, congenial to the long-term project of socialism in America. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying, look, if you want people to come along to support this project, even if it's a long-term project, and you don't imagine that you're going to see the kind of success that you desire in the near term, or in the next decade, or in the next 3 decades, still, you want to start converting people at some point so that it becomes a larger mass movement. This is how change happens. We need to get people on board. We can't be throwing whole populations under the bus. It seems like a small price to pay to, apply your vote to harm reduction. That effort would have a significant impact on a large population of young people who are, people of color, who are potential victims of this administration and will certainly pay the price if this administration is allowed to continue. Now, I realize that, voting for Biden-Harris is, in a sense, just choosing who your enemy is going to be. We're choosing who we're going to fight over the next 4 years, right? On the left, we're choosing who our adversary is going to be. Do we want to be fighting Trump, or do we want to be fighting Biden-Harris? That's part of the question. But again, I think this harm reduction issue is, to me, it's the most important one. There isn't a big enough difference between the two sides to suit me. But there's a big enough difference for me to take the 5 minutes it takes for me to cast a ballot to make certain that they're put over the top. That doesn't mean I'm invested in the new administration. That just means in this binary choice, that is what I think is going to cause the least harm. And then the next day, we turn our attention to pushing the living hell out of that new administration and continuing the project of building a better society, which is what we're all focused on. And honestly, that should be what these, former SDS people should be focused on as well. I mean, they're kind of doing the same. They're doing the thing that I'm saying is a bad idea, right? They're antagonizing people on the new left when they should be trying to build a bridge between the generations of leftists to have a broader front, right? A broader multi-generational front in this fight. This is the fight of our lives. And I think getting rid of Trump is probably a really good idea. There's really only one way to do that. You all know it. You know that there's only one way, right? You know that a third-party candidate is not going to beat Trump. It's just not going to happen. You know there's only one way to get him out, and that's to get Biden-Harris over the top. We can live with this. It doesn't mean that we're endorsing them. It doesn't mean that we're going to be part of the administration and we're going to be flacking for them after Election Day. No. We're going to be right in there. This isn't going to be like the kumbaya moment after the Obama team won in 2008. And I remember those days. I remember people doing the volunteer thing. I think it was a day of volunteerism. I can't remember. Was it in January? I remember going to the Tia Bowman house in Utica with some friends who had organized this, and I went along. We were, I think it was around the holidays, and we were stacking up cans, and they have a food pantry there. And we spent a day volunteering and feeling good about ourselves. We're not going to do that, right? We're not going to be like, oh, we're just going to do a day of volunteerism and then we're going to let the administration, get its legs and not be critical of it and blah, blah, blah. No. We're going to hold their feet to the fire. If we need to be in the streets, we should be in the streets. And God knows, no one can predict exactly what's going to happen, either during this election or just following it. This is a very scary time. And we need to be ready for just about anything. We'll see. And, even if Trump loses and if Trump leaves office, he's not going to disappear, right? He'll probably set up his own network. And he'll be lobbing bombs at the usual targets from now until doomsday. And there'll be new leadership on the right, I'm sure. So we'll be fighting them, but we'll also be pushing against a new Democratic administration, which is what the left needs to do. We need to make our voices heard. But we also need to recognize that, at least in my opinion, in my humble opinion, this is how I approach it. I'm going to give them my vote. I'm not going to give them my heart and soul. I'm just going to vote and then move on and be as critical as I need to be. And I encourage as many of you who agree with me to do the same thing. I agree with Cornell. I agree with Sean King. That's what I'm going to do. I encourage you to do whatever you think makes the most sense. I'm just trying to articulate, and not doing a very good job of it, by the way, but trying to articulate my rationale for doing what I plan on doing. And I wanted to make sure that you knew what that was. But I think ultimately, whatever our vision of society is, whatever our preferred vision of society is, in order to get there, we're going to need to get there with other people. in order to get there, we're going to need to convince people that we have their best interests in mind, that we have compassion for them, that we care about what happens to them. That's the only way a truly egalitarian socialist vision can be realized, is if we convince people that it's not going to be some kind of thing that's forced on them, but something that's going to be deployed to address their concerns, that's going to take into consideration their suffering, that's going to, stand up for them, that they can be a part of. And, we can't get to that place if we're too concentrated on what's going to happen in the future to spend the 5 minutes it takes to cast a ballot to keep them from being tossed out of the country or tossed into cages. I think it's a very easy investment to make. And that's the way I view it. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. In fact, I'd be happy to hear from you in any case. That's all I've got to say about it. I want to hear what you have to say. Go to my Anchor site at anchor.fm/strangesound. There you will find the means to leave a 1-minute voicemail message, and I promise you I will listen to it. I will even play it on the air. There are links to the Twitter account for Strange Sound, which is at Strange Sound Pod. There's also a link to our Facebook page. We also have a YouTube channel, which is basically just these shows with the logos slapped on it. So no special content, no unique content there quite yet, but we'll see what happens in the future. Again, it's just me, so it's just me producing this. You can sort of tell, I'm sure. Love to hear from you. Let's make this a conversation. Take care out there. This has been Strange Sound. I'm Joe. We'll see you next time.